26 episodes of utter tomfoolery. Yeah, that's a way to explain it. Hey guys, I am back and I have decided that I will try this project that I have been trying to work on for a long time. I was starting this idea of a project in 2022 but never really got to finding a show or actually developing from it, but here I am with this video. I am heavily inspired by what RT60 did back in the day with the Tawok series, which is also known as The Amazing World of Gumball, and I think you guys should show some support to him in his channel as this video is inspired by him. Nichijou, the show that I'm talking about today, is a show about some high school students and how they live their everyday lives. However, there is a little spice towards it, and by spice I mean the utmost random shit happens which makes me question my sanity. Besides the shenanigans Nichijou provides, the anime has really changed the way I look into life, as sometimes I would describe it as silly yet stupid, but also has some seriousness put into it. Nichijou with their characters really inspired me and actually, not gonna lie, made me think more about how people's life really are, and to show my gratitude towards it I guess, I'm making this video where I rank every single Nichijou episode from best to worst. So sit back and enjoy, probably get something to eat as we have 26 episodes to rank. Also, subscribe and leave a like to help me out as this took a shit ton of time to make. One thing I gotta say before we start is the music in this series is amazing. The opening for the first couple of episodes is legendary. Both openings in this show are really good, but the first one always hits hard. The ending is also amazing along with the credits and the background music too. Alright, back to the video. When I first watched the Nichijou series, I was not really informed that there will be an OVA episode, which stands for Original Video Animation. However, since it was named as Nichijou Episode 0, I might as well add it in this video, but I won't rank it. It's not really canon with the season itself. However, if it was to be part of the series, it would have probably been in between episodes 3 to 10. As all episodes go for Nichijou, there's always multiple storylines which eventually conclude together. In this episodes, we can see 3 girls, one with brown hair, one with light blue hair, and the other one with black hairs. I won't introduce them yet because it's an OVA episode. However, next episode in Nichijou episode 1, they will be introduced. Besides the 3 girls, there were also 3 other characters which appeared but did not interact with any of these 3 girls. There would be another black-haired girl with bangs and a kid. A literal kid. There was also a talking cat, more on that later. This episode consists of 3 parts. Part 1 is called Praise, Part 2 is called Cold, and Part 3 is called Reservation. Very odd names to talk about chapters within an episode. Start off with the brown-haired girl receiving results from the test and her best friend, the light blue-haired girl, asking to see her grades. The brown-haired girl claims she got a 32, which obviously is a lie. The light blue-haired girl gets even more suspicious because the brown-haired girl, for God's sake, said 3012. I love Japanese dubs that speak English. After the light blue haired girl gave up, she suddenly snatched the brown haired girl's paper and began to see what she got. It's a 1. I don't even know how possibly you could get a 1 out of 100, but it exists. Anyways, that's how the chapter Praise goes. Because of the shit grade, light blue haired girl is forced to cheer the brown haired girl to an extent that they start beating each other up. This is what I mean by this anime showing the most out-of-pocket shit you would ever expect. Anyways, after cheering the brown-haired girl up, she became delusional and well, it ends there. Next we cut to the chapter Cold, which involves an annoying-ass kid who has a cold but doesn't like the medicine. As usual. The black-haired girl who has bangs is shown as a caretaker here. However, she's simply more than her babysitter or guardian, which is explained more in the season. She tries every way to get the kid to eat the medicine, but of course to no avail. Eventually, the talking cat and the girl decide to sneak the medicine into the girl's flan, which is a dessert, and everything went happily ever after. The last chapter of this episode is called Reservation, where the 3 initial girls from the chapter Praise returns, and for the first time, the black-haired girl with glasses and without bangs spoke as the 3 of them entered a seemingly empty train. This shows that the girls could do whatever they wanted without anyone attacking or judging them, which shows a difference in mood in this anime/manga series. It could be the most stupid thing or the most wholesome thing, and that is what makes Nichijou so enjoyable to watch and read. The OVA episode ends with the three girls enjoying a train ride all alone. This is a really nice introduction towards the series, and despite not being canon, it definitely hooked the viewers into watching the series. Manga itself, volume 1 was released in 2007 and the anime was released in 2011, so it might as well hook Nichijou fans into watching the anime adaptation of it, and hopefully the same will be for the New City anime adaptation in 2025. Nichijou episode 1 is the first episode of the 26 episode series that is actually canon to what was going on. The first episode mostly covers the details of what the original Nichijou volume 1 manga describes when it was first released in 2007. The anime itself was released in 2011. Start off with a scene of the brown-haired girl and the light blue-haired girl having a crisis, and immediately reference unnecessary details like "I just want to stay as a simple-minded idiot," showing the personality traits of the brown-haired girl. Chemistry between the two girls are very strong as they always agree with each other. We then cut to the scene of the black-haired girl with bangs. She is the guardian and caretaker of what is called the Shinonome Laboratory, home to the annoying-ass kid introduced earlier in the OVA episode. This kid is introduced as Hakase in Japanese, or simply Professor in English, sub and dub. We'll call her Professor for the time being. Her caretaker, also known as the girl with the black hair and bangs, is called Nano, full name being Shinonome Nano, and she is quite unique. She has a key on her back as if she is a toy. That is because she is a toy. She is a robot created by the professor, a little annoying genius. Nano's role is to take care of the professor and basically acts as a mother. However, with further investigation later into the series, Nano was actually the age of a high school student if she was human. As of the anime, Nano was simply only a year old as a robot. Here we can see Nano's caring nature and how she really values what she has, and she went to the extent of catching a cat for a fish, where she ends up accidentally bumping into a student, causing an unnecessary tension and explosions, which cause a domino effect later on. I mean, seriously, what was the need of this explosion? Things like this is what makes Nichijou so favorable. We then cut to the brown-haired girl saying "Selamat pagi." Indonesia is mentioned, boys. Pack your bags, we have been mentioned. My bad. But this brown-haired girl, her name is Yuko Aoi, Yuko for short, and she is one hell of a problem. She is stupid as hell, and I can't tell if she's simply delusional or dumb. Maybe both, but that makes her one of the best characters in the series. Light blue-haired girl, Yuko's best friend, is Mio Naganohara, Mio for short, and she's the smart one, still ambitious like Yuko but smarter and wiser. She gets better grades and overall is my favorite character in the Nichijou series, besides Nano, or the talking cat later on. Mio is exactly like me when I hang out with some of my dumbass friends. I'm joking, I love my friends.
I just lost my dog. Then my brother taught me how to take the bag. I just lost my dog. Get right in the field, I had to make a bag. But then he lost his soul. Wish I could take it back.
Yuko obviously has a dumbass wishes upon herself today that she has luck, and after the explosion caused by Nano, multiple things went to the sky and fell back down, and whenever Yuko mentions the specific thing, it always ends up hitting her in the head.
いきなり降ってくるかもよ。夕立とか氷とか。こけしが降ってきた。めったにないでしょ、そんな人。まずいないよ。逆についてるかも。ついてね。こう考えればいいんだよ、みおちゃん。当たったのが生ものじゃなくてよかったって、そう考えれば不幸中の幸い。
Yuko and Mio go to a school where someone finally acknowledges Yuko for saying "Selamat pagi."
Yuko, selamat malam.
Indonesia mentioned. and that person is Mai Minakami, or Mai for short. She's a black-haired girl with glasses, and she's one of the girls with the questionable side of the anime. She's creepy, but a curious person too. We are then introduced to a teacher character, the homeroom of Yuko, Mio, and Mai, the main trio. Izumi Sakurai, or Sakurai Sensei in Japanese. I don't really know in English, but we'll call her Miss Sakurai for now. Miss Sakurai is a very shy teacher who works as what? A student counselor? Or student management teacher which keeps students in line? I think so. She's an English teacher too. Despite her timidness, she's very good at her job but really shy. Anyway, she's a new teacher in this school, and according to the manga, she's 22 because she will have relations with another character later on. Miss Sakurai ends up doing a speech in the assembly in front of all the students of the school that the trio goes to, which is a real school by the way, located in the Gunma region in Japan. And then she called out the students for bringing goats to the school. You know, Ronaldo. This is where we get introduced to Kojiro Sasahara, or Sasahara for short, a gentleman and the posh boy of the school. He believes everything is to be put in a posh way and doesn't make time for such unnecessary things. And this is where love interest 1 and 2 gets identified, as we learn that Mio has a major crush on Sasahara. But another girl also seems to show love interest, and that is by guns. Ah, Nichijou and guns. Lovely.
そうは言うが、立花美里よ。なぜ私が日本足でスタコラ歩かねばならんのだ。大体、笹原家の長男というのは。
何が笹原家の長男よ。
なんだ、長男が長男と言って何が悪いの。
Misato Tachibana. Misato is a second-year student, much like Sasahara, who seems to absolutely despise Sasahara. However, she does show a little crush-like interest towards him from time to time. Sasahara and Misato get into an argument which eventually reveals that Sasahara, despite being a posh gentleman, is simply a farmer's child. He, however, does not mind. Scene then cuts to Mio and Yuko next to a fire alarm. Well, you know what happens next. Then the first episode is covered. Man, that was long because of the introduction of so many characters, but what happened to Nano after the explosion? Now this is kind of different to how the manga describes it, as it shows Nano is still a housemaid, while in the manga she's already a high school student, but it does correlate somewhat. Now, moving on to episode 2, the episode is basically a deeper and more interesting introduction towards each of the characters mentioned in episode 1, with the likes of Nano literally functioning as a robot after the professor decided to activate a bunch of external functions she has. We also have a cute little scene between Misato and Sasahara where apparently Sasahara had joined the drama club and we simply got a scene like this. One thing I learned is that Misato owns many weapons. Yeah. By the way, this is the first time the background sound sample in the Living Tombstone My Ordinary Life was featured, and it is a banger, so I suggest you go listen to the Living Tombstone song. And yeah, we are also introduced to the new character who in my opinion is the most questionable character in the series besides Mai. That is Yoshino Nakanahara, Yoshino for short, aka Mio's older sister. Now I expected her to be a role model towards Mio, yet even stronger as we know Mio is quite literally a demigod herself, as can be seen later in this episode and series. However, Yoshino is quite dumb, and for a senior student who's doing her exams, it isn't really normal activities.
しかもなんかこのスプリンターなんで私を持ってミオの学校の制服着てたから分かんなかったでしょ。はあ、頼む。目覚まし止めるのも大変だったし。いやいやいや、そんな怒んないで。ほら、これでラーメンおごるから。
Yeah, look at that. Anyways, besides the introduction of Yoshino, we now have the most intriguing part of the episode. That is the ultimate chase scene after Yuko wanted to copy Mio's homework. However, after giving the homework, Mio realized she drew a suspicious drawing of probably Sasahara. And there we go, the most ultimate chase scene. She literally broke the sound barrier. I guess that is what I like most about this episode. And it reminds me of the time when I chased my friends for pranking me or some shit. This episode definitely is not one of the deepest episodes where they really go into the storyline, but simply it's a nice touch, and I've got to say Misato and Sasahara looks more compatible than Mio and Sasahara. I mean, Mio's the first year in the high school and Sasahara is the second year, so yeah. Unfortunately, in my opinion, it doesn't really rank higher than episode 1. Now, episode 3. I've gotta say, this episode got a lot more interesting. The episode begins with the introduction of a cat who escaped his cage to chase a bird and ends up falling down in a box labeled Sakamoto Laboratory or Industries, I'm pretty sure. This cat would end up being my favorite character, actually second behind Mio but above Nano. This cat, its name is Sakamoto-san, named after the box label. Taisho was his former name, with his former owner, which would all connect later in the series. The cat was found by the professor and Nano after the professor brought it home and created a talking device in the form of a scarf to let Sakamoto speak.
Sakamoto? その猫坂本って言うんですか？そう、箱にも書いてあったから。そんな安直な。よし、噛んだ。
What I would have thought, or we would have thought Sakamoto would say would be cute, instead, he was the most sassiest and over-egotistical man imaginable.
どう考えてもさっきのは撫ですぎやろ。だいたい猫が泣いてるときはほとんどが腹が減ってるって相場が決まってるんだよ。
すみません、よく知らなくて。
あと名前。箱に坂本って書いてあったからって安易すぎだ。
だから言ったじゃないですか。だって。
お前ら、年いくつだ？
8歳です。1歳です。
俺は人で言うと、20歳になる。坂本さんやろ？まあ、これからただ飯を食えるってのはありがたい話だが、年上を敬う気持ちは常に忘れんように。それからついでに言わせてもらうとお前たち、猫だからって何かと撫でまくるのも考えもんだ。はっきり言って、俺は撫でられるのは嫌いじゃねえ。けどな、猫には限度ってものがあって、
元の場所に置いてきますね。
すみませんでした。
The cat claims he is 20 years old in human years, hence being the eldest in the household, but since he's a cat, he can't really do much, can he? Besides Sakamoto's introduction, the rest of episode 3 was much of a bore, and that is because Mai is in it. For God's sake, Mai. I never really liked Mai as a character, and she makes the episode so boring at times. In this case, giving Yuko her answers for the math homework, but it just ends up being a bunch of doodles or dilly-dallying.
Mai-chan. いやー、お恥ずかしい。うちな、ちょっと数学の宿題忘れまして。もしよろしかったら、ちょっとだけ見せてほしい。はい。あら、サンクスありがとう。ちょっと待っててね。超マッハで映しちゃうから。
大変だ、大遅刻だ。大変だ、大変だ。
バカモン、朝からうるさいぞ、マサオ。
大変なんだ、大遅刻なんだ。
こっちはリストラだよ。
I can't really say much about her, she really is boring as hell. Mai is pretty strong however, as she literally beat the shit out of Yuko in an arm wrestling competition. Some side characters were introduced by the likes of Tanaka, a kid in high school with an afro hairstyle. Tanaka was introduced when Miss Sakurai asked Tanaka to moderate his hairstyle. There was also a tough scene between the principal and vice principal, as we know that the vice principal was demoted from being the principal himself. What a load of tension. Now this episode has a really interesting sub-show called Helvetica Standard, which is like a second comic created by Keiichi Arawi. The comic doesn't really make sense, but it does most of the time. This edition was not bad in this episode, but I really didn't get much of it. Yuko was the real star of this episode, appearing in almost all the scenes besides the Sakamoto scene, and I've gotta say, I've really grown to appreciate Yuko's character more in this episode rather than Mai's. I actually despise Mai in this episode. Not bad, I would say, but this episode is really slow at times, and not as fast paced as episode 2. Episode 4, baby! I'm already tired of doing this. Alright, this episode introduces us to a couple of new characters, however we start off with Miss Sakurai. Miss Sakurai is simply just timid at this point. She goes on to tell Sasahara off for literally eating. And before you know it, Misato appears with a cannon.
何が微妙？廊下で大声出して少しは風紀考えたらどうなのよ。それは学校に持ってきては。ミサト、行くよ。笹原、あんたは昼休み話があるから教室に。
Yeah, you can see why they're so compatible.
確かに風紀が乱れているのかもしれない。
Now, a new side character appeared, and that is Mohawk Man Tsuyoshi Nakanajo. Nakanajo for short. He was also being told off by Miss Sakurai for having his hairstyle styled in a certain manner, and well, you can see how this goes.
はい、何でしょうか。
ですね、学校でその髪型はちょっとあれかななんて。ちょっとだけかななんて。ごめんなさい、ちょっと聞こえなかったからもう一度。横から生えてこないんです。
Then the next scene cuts to two new characters, Kenzaburo Daiku for short, and Yuria Sakiguchi, Yuria for short. Yuria has yellow hair and Daiku has brown hair. They're both part of the Go Soccer Club, apparently a club that involves the board game Go and soccer fusion together, and that is also love interest number 3. Number 1 and 2 being Mio and Misato with Sasahara. Yuria was said to have feelings for Daiku but never really expressed it, however in the manga she would later reveal it in later volumes. The Ghost Soccer Club does not really have many students participating, which by the way, Daiku is rich as hell, as you can see in later episodes.
それより明日お礼にジュースでもおごるよ。別にいいよ、そのくらい。遠慮するなって。じゃあな。途中でミキサーとリンゴの果樹園を買って帰るぞ。
はい。
あれが大工財閥の力か。
We then have a scene of Yuko returning with her dumbass forgetting her eraser as usual in the test. Guess who was disturbing her, however? It was Mai. Yes, I really do hate her, but in this episode she actually matched my humor for once. The two girls, Yuko and Mai, sat on a hillside during the sunset after school. Mai was on a rampage of pranks and indecipherable jokes, and when sitting with Yuko, expresses her feelings romantically, to which Yuko interprets as illegitimate and started stuttering.
困るんだけど。ごめん。やめてよ。そんなことされたら、ゆっこのこと、ゆっこのこと、より好きになっちゃうから。ちゃんか、好きになっちゃえば、ね、親友、親友。そういうんじゃないんだけど。異性じゃないけど、異性として見ちゃうというか。なんか今日おかしいと思ったんだよ。だっていつになく結構喋るし、寄り道していこうなんだよし。全部これ言うためだったの？ていうかいつから？ちょっとまいちゃん。なんていうか、そういうのってよくわかんないっていうか、やっぱりそういうのってまだ早いっていうか、まだ高校生だからというか。今のボケたんだけど。
You know, it was obviously a joke. Mai won this round and it was hilarious seeing Yuko completely die inside, but I guess that's some points for Mai and some appreciation towards that character. Now that was pretty much it, but there was a Shinonami family scene in this episode, but not much to see. Nana was just doing her everyday tasks, the professor was being a douche, and Sakamoto tries not to chase a string or stick, I guess. The episode was definitely one of the better episodes and I'm actually pretty impressed by the direction the episode went. I would honestly rank this episode in a high slot. Nichijou Episode 5. Alright, this episode focuses more on other characters rather than the main trio. An odd segment of the professor in a cat dress, yeah, and Mohawk Kid, Nakanajo visiting some kind of person who's actually a scam.
すみません。信長を、織田信長を呼んでください。
勘弁してください。
呼ばないの前に拒否とは。いや、何分お年寄りだ。体調の面もあるのだろう。ここで攻めるのは。失礼します。帰ろう。僕には人は責められない。それが分かっただけでも収穫としようじゃないか。
お兄さん。5000円になります。
We are then introduced to two side characters, Fechan and Weboshi. Fechan has tangerine-like hair and Weboshi has minty-like hair. Both of these girls are close friends with Misato, and Weboshi and Fechan would watch in the background, and of course we would get a Misato and Sasahara scene where Misato almost pulls out another gun. A gun! Chill out, Misato, damn! But this also shines a light to love interest number 1. Yes, it is Mio, as she finally appears for the first time in the anime, showing some interest into Sasahara, besides whatever happened in episode 1. Yuko would appear once again, and with my least favorite character, Mai, and she's back to her old shitty self again. She's so boring, I swear to god. The whole Yuko and Mai section from episode 4 just went away, but we do have an interesting section between Yuko and Mio. Yuko questions Miss Sakurai about who drew the images on the most recent test, and Miss Sakurai says it was herself. Yuko then volunteers to draw for the next test, and Miss Sakurai said yes, sure. Mio overhears but had to leave to return a ruler, but after overhearing again that Miss Sakurai praised Yuko, Mio got jealous and saw the monstrosity that Yuko made, because in reality, both Miss Sakurai and Yuko can't draw shit. This ended up being a 1-to-1 fight between Yuko and Mio, which eventually got Mio into drawing another suspicious image of probably Sasahara, just to prove what an image drawing looks like. Well, that managed to shut Miss Sakurai and Yuko up, and guess what? It was used in the next test.
ここにからかわれるんだろうな。ダメダメ。割り切って前向きに。
や
ミオ先生、早く。はじめ。ミオ先生。
The humor in this episode is actually hilarious, and I've gotta say the context has improved much more, and the series is getting to know itself more. It's also out of pocket, but definitely better than the previous episodes. There was a Shinonami family scene again once again, besides the Katsu professor scene, and it was actually one of the funniest scenes as the professor drew glasses on something very important to Nano, and of course, Nano being Nano completely gets mad at the professor. Nichijou is very simple, and I appreciate that aspect about it. I feel like my reviews aren't as detailed as episode 1's reviews since it has less and less introduction of new characters, but you know, it is what it is. Episode 6, guys. Episode 6 is more of a trio episode as the majority of the scene involves Yuko, Mio, and unfortunately Mai. But Mai wasn't as bad as the other episodes, not gonna lie. However, before going on to their scenes, we have a one-time shown character, a deer. Yeah, now the principal decided to fight a deer for some unknown reasons. somehow, this led to Yuko being wiser.
それは心の奥底から出た本当の言葉だった。決して校長をかばおうとか、説明するのがめんどくさかったとか、そういうのではない。もしかしたらさっきまで死闘を演じていた勇者たちに敬意を表したかったのかもしれない。
さみだれを集めて林最上川。意味不明。
I don't even know anymore. Another scene that does not involve the trio would be the Shinonome family, as it's just weird, I guess. Nano caught a roach and Sakamoto tried to get rid of it. Well, obviously it didn't work, and now it's just all over the house. Now let's focus on the main trio. First, we have the scene of Yuko and Mio doing what we can see is a drawing game. Then we cut to Mai destroying Yuko in table football using a coin. Then last but not least is the camping scene where the trio camped in a nearby river. However, Yuko and Mio are absolutely useless when it comes to these kind of things, as they mess up a bunch, and thankfully Mai is there for the rescue.
Release. まずは舞ちゃんからどうぞ。舞ちゃんもそう思わない？
Just kidding, no she's not. She only took the things for herself, and both girls, Mio and Yuko, had to sleep hungry. This episode is not exactly suspenseful, but the deer scene was completely hilarious and out of pocket, which is what I really expected from this show. And the exaggeration of reaction from Mio and Yuko is also hilarious, showing how out of pocket this show really is. I really like the bond between Yuko and Mio, as they really show how close of friends they really are, and it just makes Mio and Yuko more likable compared to Mai, who is just selfish or doesn't exist in the same time period as they both. We can also see the rather ambitious side of Mio, or I guess out of pocket side of Mio, which only usually comes out when Mio is hanging out with Yuko, which is another signal of a very close friendship. Yuko is just a dumbass, so I can't expect anything from her. Episode 6 is, however, actually surprised me a lot, so I think it's really good. Alright, episode 7, yeah baby! Yeah, this episode is one to watch out about. Well, I guess let's start off easy. We are introduced to some sort of fantasy Yuko daydreams about in class, about a princess and her workers, and apparently after the previous owner of the blimp quite literally fell to his death, the princess owned the blimp. The wooden boxes that was found in the blimp, however, would fall from the blimp and end up somehow in the ponytails of Mio, which Yuko gets shocked by. I kinda said the word blimp a bit too much. Normal Yuko activities, I guess. But it is Yuko's birthday.
それはそうと、今日ゆっこの誕生日でしょ？はい。嘘？プレゼント？ありがとう。開けてもいい？うん。つまんないもんだよ。たまたまうちにあったやつだし。いいっていいって。その気持ちが嬉しいんだから。
I'm starting to warm up towards Yuko's character, and she's exactly the definition of a dumbass. I know some fans said it's exactly the definition of a dumbass. But now, this is what I've been waiting for. What makes this episode so good is love interest number 4. Please welcome new character Manabu Takasaki, or Takasaki Sensei in Japanese, or simply Mr. Takasaki in English. Mr. Takasaki is a math teacher in the high school that takes place in the show, and he is part of love interest number 4 because he grew helplessly in love with a new teacher, Miss Sakurai, and this couple is so compatible. I will blow up my desktop. Mr. Takasaki tries ways to talk to Miss Sakurai but keeps messing up, as he hasn't had much luck with women in his life ever. He's just like me, guys, come on, he's just like me. But it's so cute to see Mr. Takasaki trying to talk with Miss Sakurai and trying to ask Miss Sakurai out, and learns more about her, and it shows how tough men can easily get flustered by someone they like.
失礼します。すいません。大丈夫ですか？お茶かかりませんでしたか？
守ってやりてー。生まれてこの方26年。女というものに全く縁がなかった私にとって、桜井先生は庭先に不意に生えたタケノコのようだ。いかんいかん。教育者として恋愛感情を職場に持ち込むなど言語道断。しっかりしろ、高崎学。忘れ物。
Mr. Takasaki even daydreams trying to think how to get Miss Sakurai with him, and it's so cute, I swear to God.
しいたけ狩りに誘いてー。桜井先生は今彼氏とかいるのだろうか。指輪をしていないところから察すると結婚しているとは考えがたいし。
果たして私にもチャンスはあるのだろうか。好きな音楽は、好きな動物は、好きなスポーツは、好きな山菜は。あ！何考えてるんだ俺は！不純だ。不純だぞ高崎学。こんなことじゃ生徒の鏡として立派に職務を全うできんぞ。
お、高崎先生、生徒のことで何かお悩みですかな。
しかし、好きな食べ物ぐらい聞くのはいいんじゃないか。桜井先生の好きな食べ物は何ですか？
何でも食べますよ。
はっはっは、そうですか。椎茸なんかどうです？焼いても煮てもいけますし。
そうですね。揚げてもいいですか？
もちろん、揚げるのも OK です。
揚げてもいいですよね。
よし、いける。自然にだ。自然にだぞ高崎学。うちのナスに話しかけているように自然に話しかけるんだ。桜井先生。
はい、何でしょう。
すいません、たびたび呼び止めてしまって。今付き合っている彼氏はいるんですか？何言ってんだ俺は！バカか！俺はバカなのか？アホなのか？
はい、いませんよ。
失礼なことを聞いてしまって。結果オーライだ。桜井先生、1次元目頑張ってください。はい、
高崎先生も頑張ってくださいね。
はい。じゃ
あ、すいません、失礼します。高崎先生も頑張ってくださいね。高崎先生も頑張ってくださいね。高崎先生も頑張ってくださいね。
The manga hasn't exactly shown when they got together, but definitely the first love interest I would like to see get together in the show would be the Miss Sakurai and Mr. Takasaki love interest, which by the way, Mr. Takasaki is only 26, so 4 years gap from Miss Sakurai is for any of you creeps who think Mr. Takasaki is too old for Miss Sakurai. Anyway, besides this romantic scene, or I guess overly cute scene, we got Nano. Now Nano just returned from shopping and then she came across Yoshino. What a way to return Yoshino. Her peculiar curiosity got her to think what the key in the back for Nano really is, and she removed it. She removed the key. The key that Nano has always been nagging to the professor about. Well, guess what? We all know Yoshino is quite questionable. She puts the key back. I swear to God, Yoshino. Nano is distraught, and well, there she goes. But there is an upside to Nano during that day, as finally, the two main character groups, the trio and the Shinonami family, finally cross paths. Not verbally, but it is confirmed they live in the same city. As Nano was playing baseball with the professor, the ball went out of the court and Nano went to pick it up. On the way back, she managed to spot Yuko, Mio, and Mai on the way home from school. Which piqued the interest of Nano wanting to go to school. Sakamoto, the cat, notices this also, but the professor is yet to decide and is quite literally, well, I have no idea that Nano wanted to go to school. And Yoshino actually mentioned about Nano to Mio prior to going to school that day. So now Mio has a connection with Nano, so that's amazing. The two main characters are now connected. I've got to say, episode 7 is amazing. I just love the direction and the things happening in the episode. The plot is amazing and it's just one of the most cleanest and perfect episodes to ever be seen so far in this video. Okay, well, we went from a really good episode in episode 7 to, well, whatever this is. Okay, episode 8. I don't have a clue what was going on here. I don't know. We start off with Yuko failing to tell a joke to Mio and Mai, and they eventually skip class in a train that I don't even know goes outside of the city? Huh? We then also have a scene with Nano and the professor where Nano complains for not getting cavities. I mean, you know, I get it since Nano really wants to be like a normal human, you know, and she wants to get cavities, but if I was her, I'd be happy that I got no cavities, or I guess no way to get cavities. The only interesting part of this episode was another Misato and Sasahara interaction with the help of Fechan and Weboshi. Misato is easily flustered and it's so easy to see through her. She irons Sasahara's handkerchief and even gave it back to him. Sasahara did a great job giving his cool, as I'm 100% sure he already knows Misato fancies him.
しかもアイロンまでかけてる。
バカじゃないの？何その勘違い。たまたま世界の真理を考えてたら、そっちの通学路に行っちゃっただけなんだから。
わざわざすまんな、橘美里。
But besides that, there is nothing else in this episode. It feels like a filler. I think it is in the manga, but it's also so boring. There is, however, an Helvetica standard, but that doesn't make sense either. So, it's nothing really to look forward to. Episode 8 is really disappointing. I gotta say so myself. Alright, episode 8 wasn't really to my liking, but let's take a look at episode 9 perhaps. Episode 9 is more of a relaxed episode compared to what happened in the previous episodes. It mostly focuses on the lives of Yuko and Mio when school is over for the time being. Yuko is really a menace to her household too.
ここは一つやりたいことを考えてみようじゃないか。やりたいことね。
Yuko really is just a menace in society in general. We were introduced to Yuko's mom, and well, you know, Yuko causing havoc inside her house leads to...
どかどかうるさいよ。何時だと思ってんの？
Yeah, nah, Yuko got destroyed. Then we have the Shinonome family scene where apparently the professor ate all the snacks in one go in the afternoon and Nano is mad. The real part of this episode is the activities Mio did. First, she got so mad at her sister Yoshino for taking the strawberry out of her cake that she literally became a demigod and beat the shit out of Yoshino.
ミオ？
Then she decided to take up a job for 10,000 yen pay just because Yoshino has something going on. I'm starting to really not like this Yoshino character. The job Mio took is some kind of rice ball seller as a mascot, I'm not really sure. Yeah, it makes no sense. And we got the funniest scene out of this episode.
みち俺早く脱げ。これだからバイトは。ぼーっと突っ立ってないで店番の方でもやったらどうだ？はい、
バイト代1万円のためだ。我慢しよう。
十勝あずき
帰りたい。
わあ3分。
家が恋しい。しかしこれ売れてるのかな？
We were then introduced to the person who owns the shop, and that is Mohawk Kid's dad, Nakanajo's dad. He is a questionable fella, but I don't blame him. He is only trying to make a bag, you know. He was then arrested apparently.
すみません。これ1個いくら？
お客さんだ。そういやいくらで売ってんだろう。すいません。大福って
そこじゃダメなのか。逃げないぞ。俺は逃げない。一度なんかじゃ逃げないぞ。
無料で結構です。
ほ、ラッキー。
And Mio had to remain in the store for what? Her 10,000 yen pay, which I don't even know if she was gonna get paid or not because he got arrested. Mio is exactly like me sometimes. Anyways, decent episode, not much going on, but it transitions to a holiday season and even the school uniform changes for the students. Episode 9 is actually not that bad and I generally really liked it actually. Episode 10. This episode is more on the questionable side as there is not much context to what went on. We do however have a new side character and she is Haruna Anaka, or Haruna for short. Not many people know a lot about this character, but this character is the only character to experience the weirdest and the most out-of-pocket situations in the series. Haruna wanted to go to the park because apparently they were serving nakashi sumen, a Japanese dish, but it just ends up being the weirdest sequence of events to happen.
Mine! 何やってんだい。こんなの初めてだよ。次行くよ。
すみません、
なんだい。一口も食べずにやめよってのかい。そんなの法が許してもね、私が許さないよ。
と言いますか、その箸がないんですけど。
どんだけ涼しい子なんだい。ほら、さっさと次行くよ。
はい。すいません、このお手元使ってあるんですけど。
エコだよ。次行くよ。時間余っちゃくれないよ。
しょうがない、逆で使おう。
つかの間のユーモアだよ。次はそうもいかないよ。本当の地獄ってやつを見せてあげるからね。いつまでも水があるなんて平和ボケしてるんじゃないよ。何のに食らいつけてんだ。なでしこぶってるんじゃないよ。少しは素材の味を楽しんだらどうだい。ぐずぐずしてんじゃないよ。鮮度余っちゃくれないよ。全然変わってないな。朝春さん。公園で流しそうめんをやっていると聞いてピンときたよ。だって私正治さんがいつか現れると思って流しそうめんを、究極の流しそうめんを求め旅に出て30年。それは見つかったの？あらゆるそうめんを食べてきたがよくわからなくなってしまった。我々の貯金を切り崩し旅をしてきたがその金も尽きてしまってな。すまんな。流しそうめんだけに水に流してくれ。はい。何見てんだい。見せ物じゃないよ。
I felt so bad for Haruna, and I think this is just how life goes for her. I don't know. But it was hilarious seeing the two other external characters in the show argue about leaving each other. In the Shinonome family, also, we have the professor apparently being more mature than Nano. That didn't work out too well. Of course, another episode, we got another Yuko shithousery section, and she's late for school now. And once again, she reached her classroom, she found out that someone had left the trap to trap her if she came in the classroom late. Obviously, she's not gonna fall for it, right? So she tries to do every single thing to get inside the classroom, but eventually, she doesn't get what she wants.
後ろからこっそり入ればいいじゃないですか。そうだよ、わざわざ正面切って怒られることないしね。鍵やっぱりかかっちゃってますけど。そうだ、下のドアからこっそり入ればいいじゃない。空気のように忍び込んで透けるように授業に参加しちゃえば。そう、 問題はどこから入ればベストかってこと。なんだかんだと最終的に怒られるんだったら、堂々と正面突破で玉去った方がかっこいいじゃない。そう、ベストは正面の黒板消し。黒板消しを食らいながら満面の笑みで入場。おはようございます。そして弾けるクラスのエコー。
お前一体何時だと思ってるんだ。ったくしょうがねえな。早く席につけ。
いける。そうよゆっこ、明るく元気よくピエロを演じるのよ。いざ出陣。朝もはよからおはようござい
Never
ますなんつって。
mind, they're all gone. But one thing we have never thought we would ever see in this series of Nichijou is to see Yuko study. Yeah, Yuko became study motivated. Yeah, let's go Yuko. By study motivated, I meant she went crazy on how studying will help her in the future. I particularly love Yuko's mom for being so out of context and constantly beating Yuko up. And the way she does it is hilarious. Like, at times it looks like she completely folded Yuko out. Anyways, episode 10 is a decent episode and it seems much better than episode 8. And I'm actually glad this episode exists because now I have a completely odd thing in my mind.
Mine! 何やってんだい。こんなの初めてだよ。
Episode 11 is actually decent because we get to see Yuko completely failing in class again, you know, the usual Yuko activities. The show is kind of missing out on Mio episodes, but Yuko is a good substitute for the time being. This episode does however start with a Helvetica Standard segment, and this segment is the only one I actually understood compared to other Helvetica Standard segments in prior episodes. We get to see Yuko get cured from a cold just to realize an exam was the next day, and it's also a final exam, so it's a very important exam. So Yuko tries to pull up an all-nighter, but it just ends up with her making useless poems.
山をハロー。英語の範囲がわからない今、博打を打つしかない。英単語のみでいざ参る。アテンプト、試みる。ラブ、私の愛を。オールウェイズ、いつだって離れていた。コンファメーション、あなたの愛がテレポーテーション、今時を飛ぶ。だからコスモス、空を駆け抜けてミッドナイトサブマリン、君と乗りたいのさ。フォーエバー、永遠に。フォーエバー、君とフォーエバー、いつまでも。できたー。わかってる、わかってる。もう勉強しても無理ってことは。もうダメだ、お母さんに殺されちゃう。どうしてよりによって今日風邪治っちゃったんだろう。死ぬくらいなら風邪の方が100倍もマシなのに。せめてあと3日。
She then tries to get herself sick once again by going to the bathroom, literally finding us any way to get her to have another cold. And she tries and tries and tries and...
学校行くんでしょ。なんだあんの。元気いっぱいじゃない。
Yeah, nah, she's cooked. During the exam, she tries her best to finish, but the image from episode 5 haunts her again as she can't even identify what in the world that really is. I'm pretty sure this is an English test and I wouldn't even be able to identify what the hell that is. I've got to say, I like the sequence that Yuko had from her literally dying before the test to taking the test itself, and Mai, for the first time since episode 4, was actually a good character comforting Yuko for the results of her test. We also get a scene of the vice principal and his daily life. He's a lonely man, however his daughter would visit him from time to time along with his grandson. And what did he and his grandson do?
後で早く食べて。美味しいから早く。
でも
早くね、早く、一刻も早く。美味しいから。
きっと幸せも泥の味がするんだな。
おじきが倒れた。
Yeah, nah, he's as cooked as Yuko, man. I didn't really like the Shinonome family segment of this episode because it's just a professor making glue and causing havoc to both Sakamoto and Nano, but it is sort of funny, the way Sakamoto reacts to such things. We also have the return of Daku from Ghost Soccer Club, and after convincing another student, Ogi, to rejoin the club, well, of course, that is by his rich stuff too, as he bought a whole ass blender with the juice after flying off using a helicopter. This idiot uses a helicopter to go to school. Crazy life of the Daiku Corporation.
これが大工財閥の力か。
Obviously, Yuko carried this episode, but I think it's not bad. Besides all of these scenes, Nichijou episode 11 was not bad and I really think it had potential. Alright, now episode 12. Episode 12 is actually really good and I think it would surpass episode 1. An episode carried by the main trio is definitely ones to watch. Yuko, obviously doing stupid shit, sees her forgetting her homework and then tries to go back home, but Mr. Takasaki, he has returned, would just tell Yuko to sit back down. In this episode, we also get a new character, Buddy, the dog. Buddy's just a normal dog and he always appears from now on whenever Yuko is sad or distressed. The dog would pet Yuko on the back with sympathy and Yuko would just question her life at that point. The jokes in the Shinonome family are also on point, like the insane professor and the flabbergasted Sakamoto.
名刺をどうぞ。へへへ。
なんだこれ。どうすりゃいいんだ。なんだこれ。どうすりゃいいんだ。
Yuko and Mio also goes to a theme park, which is where the humor actually peaked, as we see Mio losing Yuko's wallet and it just ends up being Yuko's sad day all day.
ああ、来てますよ。
いやー、よかったよ、あって。ほんと、一時はどうなることかと思ったよ。
デニムの半ズボンにデニムのシャツをインしてデニムの帽子もかぶった女のお子さんがお母さんを探しています。お心当たりの方は迷子センターまでお越しください。
私、お化け屋敷超苦手なんだけど。はい、取るよ。
Highlights of the day, however, Misato and Sasahara scenes return. Misato was trying to purchase a drink from the vending machine, but Sasahara suggested a good drink, which Misato eventually buys. Sasahara, obviously feeling happy with himself, gets obliterated by a shy and blushing Misato. Haruna would also return as she tries to play a game in the carnival, but literally gets scammed as all the prizes were bolted onto the board. This made her in shock, and I guess that's the everyday life of Haruna. Honestly, in my opinion, this episode is chill and really funny at times, and I appreciate most about it, and I've gotta say it's one of the highest ranked episodes so far. This episode is also an amazing episode from episode 12. Well, let's start off easy. Yuko, obviously being an utter dumbass, comes to school heavily sick. Her entire body was so weak head to feet. Why? Well, she is sick with the cold. And she looks like she's high on some shit. But why did she show up to school if she was so sick? That's because she wanted to show Mio some magic tricks. But as soon as she pulled the magic tricks up, it fell all over the floor and Mio was forced to stare as Yuko literally died inside and outside. We also have Yuko finally getting a good score. All my days rooting for this dumbass to get something more than the 60% has come true. Yuko got an 80% in a class average of 92%. Wow, Yuko, you are one hopeless idiot. Now it's time for the stars of today's episode. The Shinonome family. Well, it started off rough with the professor being the most annoying kid known to mankind and causing Nano to buy her treats after throwing a tantrum in the middle of the plaza. But then the episode slowly transformed into a wholesome scene as the professor, being too scared to go to the toilet, asked Nano to accompany her during the night, and here is where we discover that Nano is scared of thunder.
Nano, どうしたの？ねえ、Nano、ねえ、博士。雷ですけど。博士がいるから大丈夫だから。
To comfort Nano, the professor thought about what Sakamoto talked about with her earlier, about the fact that Nano really wanted to go to school. This was after Nano saw some kids the day before. This sparked the idea and the professor asked whether Nano wanted to go to school.
Nano, 学校行きたいの？いえ、ずっと家にいますよ。でも坂本が、ナノが学校行きたいって言ってた。そうですね。
But once the morning rolls out, Nana was surprised by the professor destroying her entire laundry after being folded. But the surprise would come in the form of an invitation to join the high school that the main trio goes to.
何やってるんですか？遊んでないで洗濯物畳むの手伝ってください。明日から学校行っていいよ。なんで？どうしたんですか？いきなり。博士の粋な計らいです。これで昼間にお菓子いっぱい食べても怒られないぞ。でも博士、これじゃランドセル背負えないんじゃ。高校です。でも博士、ネジは取ってもらわないと学校に。ナノの制服です。
Nana was delighted. She was so happy and became the most wholesome scene imaginable I've ever seen. And it does bring a tear to my eye. This episode is definitely one of my favorites and the execution and the plot is amazing. It is so amazing to see Nano back to being happy and a sign that the main trio would officially meet the robot. It isn't exactly canon towards the manga, but still, this is one of the most wholesome and the cutest scene out of this anime. So yeah, episode 13 is definitely a high ranked episode. Alright, next episode we got episode 14. Wait! Hold on, before we continue to episode 14, unfortunately this video took way too long to update, or I guess video edit. So guys, watch out for part 2 from episode 14 to episode 26. So this is just part 1 for now, from episode 1 to episode 13. And keep watching my uploads, and yeah, this series really changed my view on the stupidity of life. Yeah, thanks for watching. Consider showing support by subscribing and liking the video, because you know, I work really hard on these videos. And you should also watch Nichijou too. It's actually a really fun anime. You can probably watch it in Crunchyroll or something. So yeah, I'll catch you in part 2. Stay posted guys. Selamat tinggal.